Hi, this is Frank Strocio with Stories Best Told in the Dark. Today I wanted to answer some questions from some of the people who have viewed my videos in the past. Rather than responding individually, I figured I'd just do a short clip to answer some of these questions and maybe say a little bit about what's coming up. So, first of all, Stories Best Told in the Dark at gmail.com is my email. So if someone does have a question or wants to even kind of get one of their stories put in my next book, I'm in the process of writing a second book of true stories of the paranormal and the supernatural and the preternatural. So anyone interested, just contact me there. So the questions that I've received, why is there so much anger, road rage, killings these days? What's going on? Have people gone mad? Some people have said to me on my walks at night with my neighbors, I don't even really want to leave the home anymore. And maybe that's the intent, to keep people in their homes. I don't know. But people are really nervous today with the political climate and everything else. So that was one question I wanted to try to address. What is demonology? What is a lay demonologist? What is a demon? I say in my book, Stories Best Told in the Dark, on the back of the book, I talk about being a lay parapsychologist and also a lay demonologist. So, what is that? So, I'm going to try to answer that. Is demonic possession real? How do people actually become possessed by demons? What can be done to protect yourself? So, addressing the first question, why is there so much anger and so much going on? I wanted to go back to the Bible for this one. The very first English translation of the Bible was by William Tyndale in 1534. And I always go back to the earliest translation because I'm not sure translation after translation after translation over 2,000 years, or I shouldn't say 2,000 years, but since 1534, the vernacular keeps changing, and that may be good, it may be bad, I don't know, but I like to go back to the original source. So in the second epistle of Paul to Timothy, in chapter 3, we read that in the last days there will be very trying times. Men will be self-serving, all about, not about helping others, but about pleasuring themselves, covetedness. They'll be proud. They'll exhibit a lot of pride, kind of like Satan himself. That was the sin he was accused of, pride. Disobedient. Children would be very disobedient to their mother and father. They would be ungrateful, unthankful. People would be unholy, unkind. They would make promises and break them. It goes on and on and on. If you read this paragraph, what it would be like in the end of days. So the question is, are all of these problems going on now because we are entering the end of days? And if so, then it makes sense. According to St. Anthony the Great, he said a time is coming when men will go mad. And when they see someone who is not mad, they will attack him saying, "You are mad. You are not like us." Okay, put that in today's environment, right? I don't know how many times I talk to people and they say people are going mad. Children are killing parents. People are driving cars through crowds of people. People are taking AR-15s and walking into synagogues and churches and schoolyards and blowing people away, bombing. It's just incredible what's going on. So this kind of fits, I think. Again, this is just one of many things, many signs. And the signs are all around us. Clearly, those who care about the Lord know that what we're experiencing right now is what was prophesied all the way back to 2500 BCE or earlier. the things are starting to come true. Scripture states that Jesus told his disciples that the end of days would be like the days of Noah. It's becoming increasingly obvious, to me anyway, that if you want to know what the days of Noah were like, just watch the evening news. I mean, the good news is few and far between. Bad news is everywhere. So, are we in the last days? I tend to think so. And I'll give you some other clues about that. So before we get to what's next, one thing I would say is that there are other prophecies that point to what's happening today. Too much to talk about on this video, but I did pull together a bunch of information for a Protestant minister that I happen to be in first class on one of my flights with, and he asked me if I could put my thoughts together so he could talk to his parish about it. So I did put a PowerPoint presentation together on that, if anyone's interested in that, just send me an email and I'll get that off to you. So what now? Crime is on a significant increase all over the country. During the last 3 decades, the last 30 years, a person's chances of becoming a crime victim increased 280%, and the chances of becoming a victim of violent crime increased 460%. That could attribute to a lot of what's going on. Our borders are no longer secure. We are no longer a sovereign nation in my mind. Clear and enforceable borders are an essential element to sovereignty. Without them, the nation really can't define itself. Our streets are littered with trash. We have the appearance now of a third world country. Now with high rates of homelessness everywhere, and I'm not just talking about Skid Row in California or the homelessness just 5 blocks from the White House, the capital of the most powerful country in the world. Not just the economic and political instability we have, but I drive down Route 95, any of the major routes, north and south, east to west, and as you look out your window, I challenge you to find 1 mile of road that doesn't have trash on one side or the other. Anything from a coffee cup to, in some cases, I've actually seen a whole mattress on the side of the road. This is not the way it used to be when I was a kid. And when you did litter and you got caught, you got pretty hefty fine. I don't see anyone enforcing any of that anymore. We used to have people walking the streets cleaning the trash. We used to have prisoners from the Correctional Institute that were on like a early release program that were out working the streets and cleaning up the streets. And, at $90,000+ a year to have someone in prison, it's not a bad idea to have them help with this stuff. I don't see that happening anymore either, at least not in the Northeast. I know in some of the states like Alabama and Georgia and that, I've seen it from time to time. Maybe they still do it there. According to Bishop Paparaki, cases of demonic possession are at an all-time high. What does that mean? It means that back in the 50s and 60s, there was a handful of Catholic exorcist priests in North America. The number 13 pops up, but it might have been more than that, but it was not a lot more than that. Today, every diocese, and I believe there's close to 400 dioceses now, every diocese in North America has at least one exorcist. And an exorcist is someone who's gone to Rome and trained on how to do exorcism according to the way Jesus taught his disciples. So that's a big deal. It's not only a big expense, but it points to the fact that our societies get more and more evil. Catholicism and Judaism is being attacked societally and legally. Anti-Semitism is at an all-time high today. And the Catholic Church is under constant attack by the liberal left. There's actually legislation trying to be passed by the current party in control to limit the Catholic Church's ability to use its own properties as it sees fit and to take away some of the tax benefits that churches have. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, Catholic churches were forced to close during the pandemic, even though every previous pandemic they were not. Go all the way back to the Spanish flu, which was a worse pandemic than this one. Go to polio, go to basically any of the past ones, and the churches were always open. Now they've been forced to close, which means the government now is trying to exercise control over our religious beliefs. Since Roe versus Wade, the legalization of the killing of innocent children, millions have been killed. Almost 25% of our population, since I think it was 1973 when Roe v. Wade happened, have been killed. I don't think anyone who has any religious background or anyone who asks themselves the question, what would Jesus do, would agree that this is good. Okay, I'm not saying it's never good. I'm saying there are times when a doctor and a mother need to talk about how to handle a situation when the mother's life's in jeopardy or there's been rape or incest. But the two studies I just saw put that at less than 1.5% of the total abortions to date. Most of them are being done as a means of birth control. There are all kinds of natural disasters happening now. Climate change is going really crazy, and it's getting worse. So I'm going to stop for a second and just talk a little bit about demonology and then try to tie this all together. Any word that ends in ology, which is a Greek for the study of, any word that ends in ology, parapsychology, demonology, angelology, soteriology, hamashiology, all of these ologies, even just basic psychology, they're all the study of a particular field. So demonology therefore means the study of demons or the study of the demonic. Okay? And it seems that every religion, Hindu, Buddhist, it can be Muslim, Christian, Judaism, any of these all have a belief in evil entities. The difference, though, is with Judeo-Christian philosophy and even Muslim, they believe in Satan and they believe evil entities cannot be changed into good entities like some of the Eastern religions do. So that's a difference there. So what is a demon? First, I'm going to try to answer that question purely from the Judeo-Christian theology. I'm not an expert in all the other religions, although I've studied all of them. In my library, I've got all the books of the Hindus and the Buddhists and all that, and I've read them, I've studied them, I've enjoyed reading them, but I'm not an expert in any of them, including Judeo-Christian theology, but I have spent a lot of time dealing with parapsychology and demonology. So there's two traditions. There's the Adamic tradition and there's the Enochic tradition. The Adamic tradition says that the origins of evil really start with the serpent convincing Adam and Eve to take a bite out of the apple from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And by convincing them to do that, we are all doomed to be born with original sin, and sin entered the world at that point. There are others who believe, according to the books of Enoch, which talk about humankind after it started to proliferate after Adam and Eve left the garden, God wanted to make sure that his creation, man, was protected. So he sent 300 angels down. I believe it was Mount Heron. I'm not absolutely sure, but I mean, you could look it up. But 300 angels that were called the Watcher Angels by Enoch, whose job was to watch over man and protect man. And instead, they lusted after the female humans, mated with them, and had an offspring that was an abomination. It was referred to as a Nephilim. And there are people who believe the Nephilim are the demons, and the fallen angels from heaven are the devils, and that there's a difference between a devil and a demon. It really doesn't matter. They're evil, and you can't change them to be good. They are what they are, right? It's their nature to be evil. So a demon's considered to be one of the following. It's either a fallen angel. So before man was created, before this earth was created, there was a war in heaven where Lucifer tried to take over. His pride led him to believe that he was greater than God and that everyone should worship him. There was a war in heaven. We heard how Saint Michael was able to cast all the devils or all the bad angels out of heaven with Lucifer into the physical world where they were doomed to spend eternity in hell. So fallen angels can be considered demonic. Watcher angels, the ones I just talked about, and their offspring, the Nephilim, who, by the way, are supposedly, according to Enoch, the giants of the Old Testament. Some of the Nephilim reached heights of 35 feet tall. Some of them had only one eye, like a cyclops. Others had other gross deformities. So a demon, according to Judeo-Christian theology, falls into one of these categories. My personal view is all of these have merit. I've studied Enoch. I think it's very accurate what is said in this book. Whether you believe Enoch wrote it or somebody else wrote it, who will ever know? The Ethiopian Jews believe Enoch wrote those books, and that's the main book in their Bible. And I have found dozens of quotes in Enoch that are almost identical to quotes of Jesus in the New Testament. And the book of Enoch was one of the books Jesus had available to him at that time. So who knows? But let it suffice to say, demons are real, and so is demonic possession. So what is a lay-demonologist? Well, the word lay is an abbreviation of the word laity. Laity can have two meanings. It can refer to the difference between the clerical and the parishioners in a church. So laity can be those who attend Mass every week, but they're not clergy. They haven't studied to become a priest or a deacon or a minister. And then there's the ordinary person. They're not a professional or an expert. They're not academically degreed. They don't have a PhD in theology or philosophy, and they haven't gone through studies in the Vatican and whatnot. So they have an interest, but they're not professional at it, and they're not degreed at it. So a lay demonologist is someone who may have extensive knowledge on the subject of demons, may even have had personal interactions with the demonic, but does not have a PhD in theology, is not clergy, and is not a professional, doesn't get paid for their services, and that sort of thing. So how do people become possessed by demons? And just to back up a little bit, I consider myself a lay demonologist because I have studied demons for many decades, and I've been attacked by them. I've lived in places where they existed, and I've seen them as early as when I was 2.5, 3 years old. and I've been seeing them on and off ever since. Now I do investigations of hauntings and stuff like that, so maybe that's drawing them near. I don't know. But I just wanted to throw that in. So how do people become possessed? Well, I say be careful what you look for. You just might get it, right? So avoid the following practices to stay safe. Any kind of occultism, especially Ouija boards. Any of you have heard of Ed and Lorraine Warren? Ed Warren made the statement once that the majority of all the cases of demonic possession he was involved in started with the use of a Ouija board. Crystals, tarot cards, automatic writing, seances, spirit rituals, magic spells. So Wicca or any type of witchcraft or anything where spells are cast, whether for good or bad, is evil. When you look at what Jesus said and what the prophets of the Old Testament said, there is no such thing as white magic. Magic is magic. Witchcraft is a pagan system. Pagan, by the way, can mean two things too. Pagan can simply mean a religion that worships nature as God instead of God the Father, or it can refer to any religion that is not Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. Either way, they're considered pagans, and witchcraft is a pagan religion. Divination, or the evil of idolatry, is also something that invites evil in. Going to psychics, fortune tellers, spiritualists, mediums. You go to a fortune teller and they tell you all about your dead ones who have passed, and this one's standing behind you, and they describe your dad or something. Just keep in mind that the demonic have been around since the dawn of creation. Every thought you've ever had, everything you've ever done, they have seen and heard and know about. They can look like anybody they want to look like, and they can know things that in your mind no one could ever know unless it was the person they said they were. But people don't die so they can hang around waiting for psychics to contact them. They don't die to hang around and haunt houses. Let's get that into our head first. Does it ever happen? Perhaps. But by and large, no. If you're constantly surrounding yourself with dark things, always watching horror movies, always thinking about hauntings and vampires, werewolves, and the rake, and skinwalkers and all this stuff, an overall curiosity with the macabre, even something seemingly benign like Harry Potter. I talked to an exorcist that I know, and he told me Harry Potter is actually evil, and letting your children watch that desensitizes them to practices that are related to witchcraft and evil and are not good. Remember, evil's not a game, and our goal is not to become spiritual. So thinking about spiritual things and getting involved in spiritism doesn't help you. Our goal is not to become spiritual, but to become holy. Now, holy people are spiritual, but not all spiritual people are holy. And you need to keep that in mind. There's a significant difference. So the greatest accomplishment I think Satan has ever made is convincing us he just doesn't exist. Anyone who is in the paradigm, I call it the PhD paradigm, but anyone who's extremely well educated, has a high IQ, and considers himself very smart, will argue that Satan does not exist. There's no evidence, there's no proof, and that's just the way Satan likes it. So what can be done to protect yourself? Demons must be invited into your life. But this can happen without even knowing that you've done it. So to protect yourself, go to church often and receive Holy Communion. and the sacrament of reconciliation. That's important. And on going to church, people tell me all the time, well, you don't have to go to church to be a good Catholic. And I say, well, that's true. But you don't need to wear a parachute when you jump out of a plane either. But it certainly helps. Being in church, and Jesus said this, the communion and all of that were sacraments instituted by Jesus Christ himself. And he said, where many come together in my name, there will I be in the midst of them. So going to church isn't necessarily just because you go to church you're saved, any more than standing in your garage makes you a car. But going to church is a good step in the right direction. It's like being on a bus. The bus driver is looking through the windshield in the direction he's going. The students aren't turned around facing the back of the bus. They're facing the same direction as the driver. We want to face the same direction that Jesus is looking, that our faith leads us. So going to church is a good thing. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely something we should push ourselves to do. If you can't find an hour a week to devote to God, then you're devoting that hour to Satan. Carry a sacramental or two with you. Carry a set of rosary beads. Everybody's got rosary beads, I hope. Carry them around. Carry a scapula around, something like this. I carry this around in my wallet. Carry around a holy water, but something sacramental, because demons don't like that stuff. They hate it. Pray the rosary daily. It sounds like a big ask, but it's really not. Most of your time, you're not spending in contemplation. You're spending it watching TV or doing something that's not leading you anywhere close to salvation. So pray the rosary daily. Use holy water. Bless yourself often with it. Have a crucifix on your wall in your house. Avoid pornography, witchcraft, Ouija boards, or anything associated with spiritism or evil. Investigate religious miracles instead of hauntings. And instead of going to graveyards at night or things macabre, investigate miracles. I've gone to many areas where the Blessed Mother had appeared. I've seen miracles, and I'll tell you, you walk away from that feeling so good versus feeling sick, afraid to turn the lights out when you go to bed. So those things are some of the things that can be done to protect yourself. So steps to demonic possession. I want to kind of wrap this up if I can. Infestation is the first step. That's the haunting of objects. Like people have probably heard of the Annabelle doll. That's an example of infestation. Cursed objects, cursed places, like Blood Prison in Ohio or Chillingham Castle in Scotland. These places are places of infestation where spirits reside and things are cursed. It can be land, it can be houses, it can be hospitals, it can be ancient burial grounds, anything like that. Infestation is usually the first step towards possession. Vexation is usually the second one. That's when you're actually being hit, touched, cut, slashed, bruised. I've been hit when I was at the Conjuring House doing an investigation. A door opened up and whacked me in the chest so hard it almost knocked me over. I've been cut, I've been strangled and had bruises on my neck. I even took pictures of a hand that appeared on one of my pieces of furniture in my book, Stories Best Told in the Dark. So vexation is one of those things that's usually one of the steps on the way to becoming possessed. Obsession, hearing voices, mental torment, hallucinations, mental illness. A lot of people, I think, that are in mental institutions are not mentally insane at all. They're in the process of becoming possessed. Possession. Demons take complete control of your body and your mind. So like the case of the Amityville Horror, Daniel DeFeo actually grabbed his gun and went around and shot everyone in that household one at a time. No one heard the gunshots. Everyone was found facing the same direction in the same position in bed. Everyone was shot in the head with one shot. And Daniel DeFeo didn't realize he'd even done it till he had walked across the street to the barroom to get a drink, and he realized what he had done. He had no control over what he had done. And then there's the case of the devil in Connecticut, the same issue where a person became possessed. And I've met that person and talked to him, and really decent Christian man. But the devil is just stronger than any human. So without Jesus by your side, you don't have a prayer. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that. Some future episodes, I'm talking with an exorcist about seeing if he would be willing to do kind of a, just kind of a Zoom meeting or something with me where we can ask questions and get him to answer them directly. And I've also met a couple of really good ghost hunters or parapsychologists when I was in Florida. And I've kept in touch with them, and they've got some interesting stories about some of the investigations they've done on in what they call the Treasure Coast on the east coast of Florida. So I might try to get them involved too. But for now, I'm going to say a quick prayer and sign off. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Pater noster, qui es in caelis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, et veniet regnum tuum. Fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra, panem nostrum quotidianum de nobis hodie. Et dimitte nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris. Et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Until next time, have a good day, folks.